We've startled everybody. We started early. Gotcha. Okay, so we'll just let people just jump in and we'll do some introductions. So welcome everybody to our, what number are we on, Kino? I can't remember. How many have we done so far?
This might be our fourth one, I think.
Our fourth panel discussion from the Brown Therapist Network. This is so cool that we're doing this. I'm Tina Mystery, psychologist. I'm based in Doha, Qatar at the moment. And I've got my co-host next to me on my screen. Kino, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kino. I work for the Brand Therapist Network. I do content creation, marketing for it, and a little bit of event planning.
She does everything, basically. So welcome and thank you for being here. This is, wonderful. We've got a dive panel from all across the world, and we hope that you find this conversation inspiring. And if you have any comments, please do comment, and your comments will be shared with our panel as well. So I'm just checking the time. I know that I'm super early. It makes a change for me. I'm usually proper Indian timing, last minute, as always. So yeah, just tell you a bit about the network then. We founded in June of this year, so we're very, very new. We've got a number of members across the globe now, which is really amazing. And what we do is hold events like this, but we also support South Asian therapists with peer supervision and regular kind of hangouts where we share best practice and learn from each other, but also we try and create nurturing collective relationships, essentially for us to grow and learn with each other and from each other. So that's a little bit about us. I can't see anybody jumping in on the comments. I'm wondering if anybody is actually there. If you are, please say hello, because I feel like nobody's here and I'm talking to myself.
They're coming in now. So it's just turned 7:30. There's around 8 people watching.
All right, awesome. Well, welcome, everybody. I'll reintroduce myself.
They're coming in
Hello,
now.
hi, guys on hospitality. Awesome.
7:30.
Brilliant. Okay, and Vidya's here as well. Welcome, everybody. So I'm Tina Mystery, psychologist, founder of the Brown Therapist Network. We're here really to discuss and talk about things that probably we don't often get the chance to do on a regular basis. And as a psychologist, guess what? I'm curious. I like to ask questions. I end up asking questions and I end up leaving with more questions. And that's, the joy of being what we do and doing what we do. So I'm joined here with my co-host, Kino. So Kino, want to introduce yourself again?
So for the people that just joined, I'm Kino. I work for the Brand Therapist Network. I do content creation and I'm on Instagram a lot.
Yeah, she is the amazing person that pretty much holds the Brown Therapist Network together. So we thank you for everything that you do, Kino. Okay, so let's get started then. This is obviously a conversation around South Asian Hindus and why do we struggle with our religious identity? I don't know about you, but I do. And this is, part personal, part professional, this discussion. So I'm curious to see where you guys all sit as well. So should we just start off with the presentation, Kino?
Sure. So I'll just bring the presentation up on the screen.
If you've got comments, please do drop your comments in the comments section over there. We can see them and we want this to be as interactive as possible. This is what it's about. So please do comment and let us know if you've got any questions for our panelists. It's late in Doha, ain't gonna lie. All right, Kino, it's all yours.
Okay, so this is just a slight introduction to Hinduism itself, just before we get into the conversation. So as Tina's already mentioned, the Brand Therapist Network is a network and learning community of South Asian therapists And we really want to inspire learning, growth, development, connecting with each other, and really putting South Asian mental health at the forefront. We have our lovely panelists here today. So we have Dr. Kavita Sixaria, who joined us for one of our first panel events, and she's back today. She's a clinical psychologist based in America, and she's done a dissertation on Hindu Indian American conceptions of mental health. We have Dr. Sandeep Das, who's a junior resident at the Centre for Community Medicine at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in New Delhi, India. And he's also a founder of the Stories of Bengali Hindus. And that's an initiative started by descendants of East Bengali Hindu survivors of genocide. And we also have Pooja Bordhan, I hope I said that correctly, who's a Bangladeshi Hindu or Bindu, and she lives in London in the UK. She's been questioned on her identity in the past, and she advocates for representation for the Bindu minority community. And as we're all in different time zones, we're really grateful that you've all joined us here today, whether it's in the afternoon for you or the evening or very late evening. So what is Hinduism? Hinduism is one of the world's major religions. It was originally founded in India, and it's widely practiced in India, Nepal, Mauritius, as well as across diaspora communities across the world. It's more of a philosophy and a compilation of traditions. And Hinduism is often mistaken for believing in many gods, but we do worship a single deity known as Brahman. Some key beliefs of Hinduism include samsara, which is the continuous cycle of life and death, karma, atman, or the belief in a soul. The key goal is to achieve moksha or salvation, and Hindus strive to achieve dharma, which is a code of living that emphasizes like good morality. So what is Hindutva? So this is a term that is sometimes associated with Hinduism, but it's not the same as Hinduism. Originally, when the term came about, it was used to describe a traditional Hindu cultural view, and it was coined in the 1800s. However, since the 1900s, it's been used to describe a political ideology, which is closer to Hindu nationalism. So, and some have argued that it still describes a sense of Indian culture, and therefore it's inclusive of all religions that Indians may follow. And others believe that it's a concept that's been politicized by right-wing nationalists. So this is a fairly misunderstood term, and it's been used in both positive and negative ways. And the term is so divisive that it's been part of several court cases in India. So Hinduism has never had strict rules per se, like some other religions may have. There's many different rules depending on how you follow Hinduism, and it's possible that this has caused a dilution of faith for some people. Because there's not a set doctrine, Hinduism can vary vastly in South India, North India, in many parts of the world. And this could be why some parts of the Western world are aware of how certain cultures follow Hinduism. It is a philosophy first and foremost, so that's another key difference to other religions. And it's possible that some people identify more with their culture than their faith due to the lack of strict rules. And Hinduism has also been called impossible to define by Chief Justice Gajendra Ragadhar. Again, my pronunciation is awful, even though I am Indian. But it's really difficult to pin down exactly what Hinduism is. So what are some of the more contentious elements that have become negatively associated with Hinduism? Also, just a reminder, these aren't necessarily things that are part of Hinduism, although some might be, but it's just things that are negatively associated with the religion. So there's casteism, there's certain cultural rituals, again, Hindutva, Brahmanism, poor Hindu-Muslim relations, and anti-Hindu sentiment as well. What are some of the positive elements of Hinduism? So again, there is some of the core elements of Hinduism, such as dharma, ahimsa. There's practices like yoga and meditation that have been that are now practiced globally. It preaches peace, like many other religions, and it's very inclusive. And one cool thing is that in Hinduism, people worship the divine across all gender forms. So, why could being Hindu sometimes rarely be at the forefront of a person's identity? So sometimes people may place other parts of their identity in front of being Hindu. So it could be their political views, whether they support a particular football or cricket team, the city that they're from, or their profession, or their culture or cultural or ethnic background. And what is identity formation? So identity formation is a complex process in which humans develop a clear and unique view of themselves and of their identity. Self-concept, personality development, and values are all closely related to identity formation. So values such as your religion or philosophical opinions. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Hinduism and our identity with our wonderful panelists here. And yeah, let's just get into it.
Tina,
Yeah, we can't hear you, Tina.
Sorry?
your mic.
My mic?
No, I think it's Tina. We can't hear her.
Oh, Tina.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go. Can you hear me now? Sorry. I was talking and I was talking to myself. That's good, isn't it? Okay, that's just typical. Right, let me just find my questions again. So thank you, Keenal, for that wonderful presentation. So we'll dive right into the first question for Kavita. Why do some Indian Hindus in the diaspora struggle with strongly identifying with Hinduism? And what drives others to strongly identify with Hinduism?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a really tough one, right? I can share that myself. I was born and raised in the States with parents who immigrated India a few years before I was born. And I can really appreciate their particular struggle in helping me understand what Hinduism was in the first place, right? We've talked about how it's hard to define what Hinduism is. And it was hard for my parents, who went from Hinduism being something they didn't even think about because it was everywhere around them. It was a part of their day and their routine in a way that it just wasn't going to be for me, being a micro minority in the United States, right? And so my relationship with Hinduism ended up being very different from their relationship with Hinduism. But a really lovely one, because they decided it was really important to be intentional about things. So my parents raised me as vegetarian. And when I asked why, after getting made fun of at school or something, my dad came home and he told me about ahimsa, and he told me about explained some Hindu concepts and gave me some choice. And then he also took me to a PETA meeting, right, to say, like, this is a value that we believe in. You can see it not just in what we practice, but people around us, right? And so it gave me a really tangible way to understand faith. Always, if he couldn't answer my questions, he wanted to find someone who could answer them. And helped me form a new sense of, like, what being Hindu in a daily way was, right? Aside from just, having evening puja at home, but also understanding that the way that you treated people, the way that you um, formed your diet and your choices was part of what practicing Hinduism was. But I know it was a lot of work for him, and my dad approached it in a way that was maybe very different from even my mom, right? Who would be like, I don't know, like, this is just the way that it is, or like, sitting here and doing this with me, that's what Hinduism is. But it doesn't have to be all of these things you're grappling with, philosophically. Because when in 6th grade, I decided there wasn't a God and came home and announced it, very excited to like disrupt the family and be like, I'm an atheist now. My dad was unfazed. I'm like, why aren't you phased? I said, I'm not Hindu. And he said, no, you said you're an atheist. You didn't say you're not Hindu. Like, that is something we can unpack and you can understand better. But again, right, that's not always easy to find. And I think that's why a lot of people sometimes can struggle with identifying with something if they haven't been able to make meaning of it and grapple with it and understand it themselves, right? If it's something they've just been told about without being able to question it. And if a lot of what they're hearing comes from school, where I grew up in Texas, in the United States, which certainly has a reputation for being a bit more conservative. And I did have people who regularly tried to convert me on the school bus or told me that I was going to hell for worshiping idols, right? And had Apu from The Simpsons as like the most mainstream example of what I believed, and just had so many instances of my faith being represented as very exotic and strange and just, not what was cool or accepted by a lot of my friends. And that could have pushed me away. It certainly pushed away a lot of people I know. But I think I had the blessing of making it my own with my like challenges with it and my grappling with it with my dad, right? And I think, some of what you've talked about comes up too, right? Because I remember being really disturbed when caste was presented in my textbooks as an inextricable form of practicing Hinduism, and thinking that's not who I want to be. That's not what I want to be associated with. That's a really, really terrible way to think about people, and a terrible way to treat people. And if I hadn't had the opportunity to have a conversation beyond that, I think I also would have been pushed away from identifying and feeling okay with identifying with Hinduism, right? But in being able to understand that, like, Hindu people have maybe done terrible things across time. Not maybe, they have, right? Without question. But Hindu philosophy and what's actually in Hindu texts is beautiful. And it's unequivocal about saying that we see the divine in everyone, everywhere. And while, it's still going to take a lot of work to make sure that, like, Hindu ideals match with practiced Hindu culture, we have come some ways, right? Maybe not as far as we need to in any way, but people who've used Hinduism, who've really understood the philosophy, been able to push for better. And so I think if you don't understand Hinduism, and if you don't have a space, while being a micro minority wherever, United States for me, but certainly in other contexts too, it can be easy to be pushed away by something that is so different from the dominant faiths of other countries, right? From an Abrahamic lens, which sees things in far more black and white ways sometimes than Hinduism pushes you to. And it's understandable, but it's also sad, because I think inherently sometimes my definition of Hinduism is just a journey for the truth, a journey to seek the truth. when we can see that and when we can understand that, we can actually be better, and identifying with Hinduism can align us with our goals for ourselves.
Thank you so much for that, Kavita. It's given me a lot of food for thought, and I can resonate with a lot of the sort of feeling of being a micro minority. So I was born in the UK, and I think that a lot of that dilution occurs because of the, you know, our parents not really having the answers when we've got 101 questions about, so why do we fast on this day and why does this happen? And it must have been so lovely to have a parent who actually was able to sit with that complexity and allow you to feel your own way through your kind of connection to religion in your own way. It's not defined or determined in a particular form. I think that's wonderful that you were able to experience. Does anybody else want to add to that question? Why do we struggle, either in the subcontinent or in the diaspora? I mean, yeah, I'm just curious if anybody wants to add to that who's on the panel.
Yeah, I'd say also, obviously, at home, you're taught by your parents as Hindus. And when you're out in the world, if you're not exposed to it, like in terms of your social groups, whether you go temple or not, you kind of feel like, can I say I'm Hindu? Like, can I be Hindu? Because if you're surrounded by of a religion and you're kind of the minority, you might feel like, I don't want to talk about my religion. I don't want to say this is what I believe in, because you feel like you'd get judged or you can't relate to anyone else. You just feel like this is what you've been taught at home. This is why it's for example, for me, I grew up in Paris, and there aren't many South Asians. Forget Hindus. So growing up, I didn't have many Asians around me, and not many Hindus at all. So when I used to go to school, it was very hard to kind of tell people that this is what I believe in, this is what I follow, this is how we do things. And I always felt like I was misunderstood or I was judged. It's only when I came home I felt like I was Hindu. But out there, I couldn't really, be in touch with my identity. It's only when I came in the UK, I felt like actually there are a lot more Hindus here, and you're exposed to Hinduism a bit more.
Thank you for that. It's really helpful and a really valid point there, that actually we feel safety in numbers, and we when we see ourselves in others, we feel safer to talk about those things. Sandeep, do you have anything to add to this? I mean, you're in Delhi, so surrounded by Hindus, I guess. But your position is different, and I'm curious to kind of know what it's like from your perspective, really.
Yeah. Just like Pooja has explained, there is this home and the outside sphere died for me too. So the thing is, like, Hinduism and Hinduism in total, it is a set of beliefs, but it has some nuances which are specific to different regions. Like, suppose I'm hailing from Assam, and I'm a Bengali, so we have some certain nuances in our traditions and all those things. So these are some things which I strongly identify with. But as I move out of my home, so with mingling and mixing with the crowds, um, you identify as a Hindu, but there is some cultural ethos also that I have to keep. And sometimes it's like keeping it a little bit down, but like I'm a Bengali, so my Bengali accent will come up when I speak in Hindi or in English. So these are some very small nuances, but in total, I do not feel much of a struggle out here in India. And to be very honest, uh, the drive in me to identify with Hinduism strongly is with my parents and my grandparents. thing is that the atmosphere at my home was very much into the growth, the internal growth and upbringing of myself. They have taught me the very traditions and what were the significance of those, healing back from the times when they were small and they were taught by their own grandparents up till then now, when they are teaching to me and or to my siblings. So so this is a I can say that this is the driving force which brings me here.
Yeah, yeah, I think there is something there about that ancestral wisdom and knowledge, and how that is passed down. That then kind of makes us, or kind of encourages us to engage in this thinking, in this way of being, in the practices and the knowledge as well. Okay, should we have a look at some of the comments, Kino? Is there anything caught your eye that we could address?
Yeah, so we have another question. We have a question from the audience. This kind of links to what Kavita was saying earlier about Abrahamic faiths being a bit different. So the question is, have Hindus looked into similarities between Hinduism and Native American, Chinese, or Shinto traditions? They think the identity struggle comes from how different Hinduism is from Abrahamic religions.
Yeah, I can not say that I personally have looked into this or really understand those nuances, but in my very limited experience, I have found that the worldview is really different. And there's more of an acceptance of multiple conflicting things can be true at the same time, in a way that monotheistic religions, Abrahamic kind of lenses, I think struggle more with. Even when we're talking about this kind of idea of dharma, and a idea that it's different depending on your context. It's different depending on your place in society and what power and privilege you have, right? That rules like don't lie, don't work based on, if you're president of a country and you need to hold some state secrets, like that's actually the thing that protects your people the most, right? So two things can be kind of simultaneously challenging each other and different at the same time in this worldview, in a way that I think some more indigenous, I guess, traditions that are more in touch with nature and the land and can see that things are just never so black and white and binary, resonate with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Does anybody else want to add to that? It's quite a big question, isn't it? It's like, oh God. But I can see where, the person who asked where they're coming from. But does anyone else want to add to that? No? Should we move on to the next comment or any questions that have come up so far?
Sure. So here's a comment from Sagar, how he accepts identity as a Bengali Hindu, especially with the recent events in Bangladesh against Hindus. At 23, finding other Bindus is hard to find before he might have arranged marriage.
So who would like to comment on that?
I mean,
I think Pooja can go first. I can follow up later.
I'm not understanding what the question is.
So I guess it's two parts, but I guess the first part is really about the recent events in Bangladesh and what that conflict has kind of led to in terms of his identity. Do you kind of, I guess it's just really about reflecting on it and sharing your thoughts as somebody who shares a similar identity, really.
Yeah. Well, for me, in regards to the attacks, I mean, it's a very personal matter to me because I am Bangladeshi Hindu and I have a lot of family back home. All my dad's brothers, his sisters, my cousins are back home, and I usually go every 4 or 5 years. So hearing about what was happening during Durga Puja was really heartbreaking, really. And it's a shame because we're here and we're trying to help, but there's so much we can do. And it's just sad knowing that Hindus have always been attacked, and it's been decades. I mean, it's the numbers have gone down, and till date, like in Bangladesh or people around the world, like do not accept that Hindus are being targeted in Bangladesh. And for being Hindus, just for being Hindus, they are being targeted for nothing else. And a lot of Bangladeshis here in the UK might say they don't see it when they go Bangladesh, but that's because they live or they go as a tourist. I mean, you don't live in Bangladesh, you don't live in areas or you don't go or visit areas where Hindus are minorities. Because if you talk about the big cities like the capital Dhaka or Sylhet, my parents are from there. That I mean, sorry, my parents are from there, so my family live there. They might not see it as often, but you have extended family that live in like those areas where Hindus are minorities, and that's where the attacks were happening. And it doesn't just happen during Durga Puja; it happens on a daily basis. But again, the media doesn't cover it. Again, because we are a minority, and they like to preach secularism, which is really sad, really, to know. And I understand where it comes to identity because our numbers are decreasing day and day. So you feel like, am I going to get wiped out? Like, is my Bengali Hindu identity going to go one day where I won't have anyone else around me? Um, so yeah, it's sad, like, to know that we are targeted in Bangladesh just for being Hindu.
Yeah, it's a huge threat to that identity. Sandeep, you said that you wanted to add something as well.
Yeah. Actually, this is an Indian perspective on this matter, because because to be very honest, I have lost a family member in this recent violence in Bangladesh. Okay, so the thing is that the question is very much touching to me, because like how I accept my identity as a Bengali Hindu, not just as a Hindu but as a Bengali Hindu, and also from East Bengali descent, especially with the recent events in Bangladesh. So the point is that in within myself and within my home environment, I do accept myself. I have no problems in identifying myself as a Bengali Hindu from East Bengali descent. But when I come outside, the thing is, because of the lack of knowledge and awareness, and uh, uh, because of the avoidance by the mainstream media in India to talk about what's happening in Bangladesh, and in proper details of what is going on. So that's why people here do not understand what's going on in Bangladesh, and how people like me are coping with this situation. So if I may tell, what happened is that my distant cousin is my distant cousin, and he died in the recent violence. And when the mob had come to attack the puja pandal, he along with a group of other people was encircling the Durga Murti, and they were shielding it against them. So they hurled a bomb, and it disfigured his whole body, and it was not being able his body was not being able to identify, until at the very end, when they saw the rings on his hands, they could identify him. And later on, and actually his uncle was married to my mom's cousin sister. So for him, that my distant cousin was his maternal nephew, which so it's a very poignant thing, like in, because when he called me, he was crying and saying, "Is my little son has died? My little son has died." Because we have an tradition in Annaprashan. It's like the first rice which is fed, which is called Mama Bhat, in which the maternal uncle feeds the child with the rice. So he was the one who fed the this one with the rice, and he loved him very much. And I when I joined AIMS, at the time also we had a video call with him, and he wanted to be a doctor, and he saw me and he was like, I want to be like you. And so like, but right now, like remembering him, and also like it's very much painful for me to reconcile with that. And also that outside my home I cannot talk about this to much of the people, because of the lack of awareness. People know very little about what's going on in Bangladesh, and mainstream media out here also and in Bangladesh also are reporting too less about what's going on there. And that's why there is difficulty in identity, which I face outside my home while mingling with others, even though I identify myself as a Hindu. But as a Bengali Hindu of East Bengali descent, it's a bit difficult because they don't know about what's going on there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. That's, I'm really sorry to hear about your distant cousin. I think that, when we hear about these particular life experiences, these actual lived experiences, it really does hit home. And yeah, my thoughts are with you and your family. So, yeah. Okay. So this, what we're seeing here are the intersections of, it's not just Hindu, it's actually crossing the boundaries of our geography. Where are we from? But then the intersection of our religion is quite important so far from what I'm picking up. Now in the UK, majority of Hindus are predominantly from the Gujarat region, so the northwestern region. So, as a Hindu community, we all sort of kind of understand how each other are. But we've also started to see more migration from other parts of India as well. So we've got a huge now South Indian community. And, when we start to understand, and I think this is the key thing, it's the awareness aspect. So something what you were saying, and Pooja, similarly to you, we have to start to become aware of each other. And acceptance as well. There's something about acceptance of each other as well. And support and compassion for each other is hugely important, from kind of what I'm picking up so far anyway. Okay, do we have any other comments that we need to check in?
We have a comment and a question. So the comment from Vedya Maharaj, he believes the diaspora experience a lot of subtle racism when it comes to Hinduism, which we in turn internalize. And this causes shame within us and an internalized rejection of who we are, rejecting Hinduism whilst being Hindu, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think again, Kavitra, I think you sort of touched on this earlier as well. Do you have anything to say to this comment? Anything more?
Yeah, I mean, just that it resonates. I've had some moments of kind of being hyper aware of how I was seen by peers, and hating it, and not wanting to feel that way anymore, right? Not wanting to be seen as someone who eats monkey brains, or is drinking cow urine, or more than anything, honestly, is really discriminatory and hateful in the ways that can come across to a lot of people. And it hurts when it comes from ignorance. It also hurts even more when it comes from hate and an unwillingness to kind of see what my faith is, what I personally practice, what I personally believe. You know, I've definitely gotten people who have moved away from the faith themselves telling me that they don't respect the way that I've grappled with faith and decided to hold on to it. And that's difficult in this country. And, you know, I think, Tina, you talked earlier about kind of needing community to be able to have pride. And I think I've been lucky enough, even as a micro minority, to find that and to remember that whatever others' perceptions are, I know that I am someone who strives to be a good person, someone who strives to give back, someone who strives to be good to our planet, and that the people around me strive for the same, and to treat everyone well, whoever they are, whatever walk of life they come from. So yeah, I think, yeah, it's really easy. It's really so much easier in some ways to reject faith than to grapple with it and own it and make it something that fits what you want for yourself and for your life. But it can be rewarding also to go through that journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds
Kavita.
like it sounds like there's an element of like growth that you have to undergo and like resilience to kind of allow you to accept it. And Pooja, I think you also mentioned not necessarily rejecting Hinduism when you were in Paris, but you felt like you could be like more yourself when you came here. Did you want to add anything to like this comment?
Yeah, so going back to my point, like obviously like Sandeep said, you're someone at home because you're more exposed to it because of your parents, your family. Obviously they take your temple, you know, you just know all about it. You don't really forget that you're Hindu. But the minute you are there, depending on where you live and depending on the people that are around you, it does affect you. So was in France, there weren't many South Asians, no Hindus. So at that point, like I wouldn't even say that was Hindu. I wouldn't even say that I was Bengali because let alone they didn't even know Bangladesh was. So I'd just say, oh, I'm Indian. Just to leave it like that. So because it was just questions and questions. Whereas here, I felt like because that there are way more Hindus in certain areas. Obviously, I know in the UK, not everywhere, but in London, especially moving to London, there are quite a lot of more Hindus, so you're more exposed to it. Where I grew up, there weren't as many, so you do sometimes feel a bit again like a minority, and but because of how my parents brought me up and my belief, and I was never ashamed of being Hindu. Like I would say that I'm Hindu, or you know, I wouldn't hide my identity. My problem was more to do with juggling between being Bengali, Bangladeshi, and being Hindu, because it can be, although I'm used to being, you know, I'm Bengali Hindu, so I know what it's like. But for other people, so for example, I don't know, Gujarati Hindus or Punjabi Hindus, even they are unaware they are Bangladeshi Hindus, whereas my Bangladeshi Muslim friends, they were like, how can you be Bangladeshi Hindu? So for me, that was more of a struggle when it came to identity, because I could relate to both. I could relate to my, you know, Bangladeshi, my Bengali roots, when it came to food, culture, or like even like Bengali jokes. But when it came to like festivals, religious festivals, I was obviously, I could relate to my Hindu friends now because they would know what Diwali is or Navratri. Growing up, I noticed as well that when I was younger, especially in France, like, I could even say that I'm going to Durga Puja because no one knows what Durga Puja is. Like, so I would just say, yeah, Indian festival. I'm going to Indian festival. So they used to think it's a wedding, and I could never say it to them what it was. Even here, I guess, growing up, there were more, like you said, there were more like Gujarati, Punjabi, South Indians, Hindus. So at that time, I would say, yeah, I'm going to Navratri, but I'm not actually going to Navratri. I'm going to Durga Puja because I'm Bengali. But it was just easier, and this is why we like me and my friends came up with the idea of creating our page on Instagram at Bindus, because we felt there was a lack of representation, because we are Hindu, but at the same time we are Bengali too, and we felt like we're not represented, and people still, well, not that they don't understand that how can you be Bengali and Hindu, or how can you be Bangladeshi and Hindu at the same time? Have your parents converted? Did you get lost? Did you forget that you were, you belong to someone else? Like, I'm not, no, like, so that was more of a struggle growing up, well, especially when I went to college here. And I'm sure my other friends or people in my community can relate. We've all been through all these questions where you get asked a question, then you answer it, you get asked another question, you answer it, and then at the end they still don't understand that, oh, actually, how could you be Bangladeshi and Hindu? So yeah, but to be honest, that made me more prouder of my roots, because I see it like we are unique. There are many of us, and we can relate to both, so yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Pooja. That was really helpful. It kind of, as you were talking, it was, yeah, making me feel all kind of like warm feelings. It was good. Really, really glad that you ended on the idea of being proud of what you are. And I think it's wonderful that you're able to do that. Have you got another question?
Yeah, and this kind of relates quite beautifully to feeling proud, because Neelam has asked, what are the tools to work through childhood shame of being Hindu out in the world? For example, memories of being made fun of leaves her in an energy of hiding at certain times. So how can we actually get to that point of feeling proud of Hinduism?
Anyone can answer that one. So I'm curious to know what you're thinking. Sandeep, let's go to you. What's your thoughts on how can we, be more,
Like, what are
leave
the
behind
tools?
shame?
I think leaving behind shame, it's very much helpful through parents. Like if a like, let me tell you my own personal example. It's like, um, my grandmother used to wake up in the morning and would go she would wake up at around 5 o'clock when the whole house is sleeping. So she would wake up and would sit in the prayer room and start chanting the Bhagavad Gita in Bengali. And at the end, when we used to wake up, we used to hear her sing about, like, what are the advantages, what are the benefits of reading and chanting the Bhagavad Gita. And then similarly, the various small festivals, the small rituals, the small pujas that we have at home, and then including me in the participation of these pujas. This actually helped me to understand why certain things happen, why certain rituals are done, and this uh, this negates the shame of being a Hindu out in the world, or out in the society. Like, for example, is because I read in a Christian school. When I wasn't doing going through school, I was reading in a Christian school. So there, the thing was that many of the Hindu children out there, they were hesitant to talk about the festivals that we celebrate and all those things. But I was not that much hesitant to talk about it, or whenever, like, anyone would write essays about, like, tell about writing essays in the essay writing competition, then I would very fondly write about the various festivals, the various rituals that we do in our homes, and how we celebrate it, and what are the fun things that I enjoy in those things. So if parents can, in my opinion, because I'm not yet a parent, but I feel that if parents can involve the children in the festivities, not just in the cultural aspect but also in the ritual aspect, and also and also imbibe in them the fun and positivity in carrying out those activities, then I think the any form of shame would not have a strong footing in a Hindu's personality later on in life. So this is my opinion. I think others like to share more about this.
No, I thought that was really beautiful, Sandeep. And, like speaking psychologically, when we have these traumas, we need an opportunity to heal by relearning, right? And having a new experience. And so, possibly, if it comes from being out and about and being teased, then can you grapple with what you were doing? Can you find a community or a place where it's welcome and where you can feel invited to be a part of the Hindu community and be proud, to be able to let go of the shame, um, whatever that means, whether it's um, being able to connect with family, which can be such a beautiful way to understand the faith, or if um, family isn't an option, then seeing what is now lovely available online virtually in a post-pandemic world, but also in other ways. Basically, just getting a chance to see that um, being Hindu doesn't only mean getting bullied. It can mean community. It can mean beautiful rituals and connection, and healing.
Lovely. Pooja, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I agree with both of them. Especially what Sandeep said with like family, your parents and your grandparents. Like for me, it was the same. It was because of my parents. They've always been religious, and this is the reason why I've never really felt any shame. And the fact that they used to take me to Bangladesh, and there I was more exposed to it. They would take me to Durga Puja. They will do all the pujas at home. They will get me involved. Um, so through that, I was able to go out there, and if anyone would ask me questions, I would answer. I would be confident to answer because I knew about it from home. Whereas if you don't know, if there's you don't have anyone around you, or parents or anyone that lives with you that can actually tell you more about Hinduism, how would you know? Like as a kid, as a child, I mean, you learn from what you see and what's around you. So if you're not exposed to it, if no one's telling you, you're not gonna go. You're free for. You're just gonna learn what you see. So I agree with Sandeep. Like family does make a big impact, and to the way you feel about being a Hindu and being out there and not feeling any shame and feeling prouder and liking the fun parts. And also, it's like, who doesn't like playing Holi and, playing with fireworks during Diwali? I mean, even non Hindus do it nowadays. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I'd like to add one thing out here is that the childhood shame of being a Hindu wasn't there, but at the initial moment, I did had some apprehensions of having the ancestry from East Bengal, because the thing is that in India there is even though I'm a Bengali Hindu, but we have two aspects of it: the East Bengal and the West Bengal. The thing is, and so. Part of what I speak in Bengali, it is a little bit different from how some of the other Bengali Hindus speak. And so there was some conscious attempt previously that I would speak the way the other Bengali Hindus would speak. But later on, my grandparents, because they have they were the refugees from East Pakistan, and they are the ones who speak the dialect fluently, and later on, like, even though there other people would consciously talk to me in the way the Bengali Hindus in India speak, but like, you cannot stop a child from learning new things and learning nuances. And later on, even after trying to, like, teach me a more sophisticated and a more natural thing, means a more regularized form of Bengali, but I catched up with the way the family members spoke with each other. And now, thing is that I do have some difficulties in explaining my identity as an East Bengali Hindu, but I do not feel any shame in saying that my ancestry is from Bangladesh. So that's the thing.
Thank you, Sandeep. That was really lovely. What I was picking up really was things. I mean, the question really was alluding to sort of tools, and I guess, Kavita, you were sort of saying around actually what helps us is to have some guidance, be it from our parents or grandparents. And Pooja, you were kind of echoing that, and similarly to what you were saying, Sandeep. I think that that's important, absolutely. But also, there's got to be a willingness from the person to be able to delve into that themselves. You might have the most religious parents in front of you, but because of what you're experiencing in the external world outside of the home, there could still be an element of rejection. What we're talking about, this childhood shame, because that is stronger. And if that is something that has been felt or experienced, what can we do now as adults? What is it that we need to be thinking about as adults? And this is something I kind of resonate with quite a lot, because I'm a mother. I've got 2 children, and a question that always pops up in my head is, what am I passing on to my daughters? What are they taking from me? This very diluted form of Hinduism that I kind of somehow make sense of. So yeah, I'm curious if anybody wants to sort of add on to that what can we do as adults if we have lived through these feelings of shame about our connection to Hinduism or our disconnection to Hinduism? And what can we do about it now?
I think okay. I think others might be able to say much more.
One of the things that's just immediately coming to mind is like the kindness we need to show to ourselves when we notice that we're feeling shame or guilt, right? And patience to be able to process these feelings. And obviously, I'm a therapist myself, and I think that therapy is a lovely space to be able to work through feelings like this, right? I'm sure, Tina, you agree. But also, again, I think it's about being able to give yourself a corrective experience, right? To be able to say, this isn't how I have to be seen, and this isn't how things have to be. I can give myself a chance to experience something different and then decide, is it something that does define me, or is it something that doesn't? And I can let go, but I can at least have this confidence in myself that I've grappled with this, right? That I've thought through this, that I've understood myself, and let go of what I don't believe and what other people have pinned on me in teasing me, shaming me.
Yeah. And I think that there's something about giving yourself permission to be a student again. I think there's something about that, that there's this expectation that you grow up as a Hindu and you have all the answers, when in reality, I think that for many of us, we don't have all the answers, because for me in particular, my experience, my parents didn't have the answers. And so I would be often left with questions unanswered. And I think that what this has prompted me to do is to go out and read and connect and learn a bit more, but also to come to a conclusion that makes sense for me and kind of ascribes to my values as a human. You know, if that fits with me, I'll take that, because that fits with what I believe my Hinduism looks like. And I will pass that on to my children. And one thing that I've kind of started to think about is this idea of be your own version of Hindu, whatever that means is correct for you, you know. So it's something that I feel that there's a lack of rigidity around it. There's not a, you know, like a set way of what it means to be a Hindu, how we practice Hinduism. It is very broad and it is flexible. But ultimately, it's the values that underpin that, which is the most important thing. And you know, Kavita, you kind of alluded to it, which is just be a good human being, be a good person who believes in, you know, these particular sets of values. Pooja, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, talking about shame, I think it's important to understand what exactly are you ashamed of. I mean, being ashamed of being Hindu, what is it about being Hindu that makes you ashamed? Is it, you know, that people think you're worshipping many gods? Is it people calling you that you're drinking, you know, cows, you know, urine? What is it? Is it because you don't agree with what your parents are doing or what you're seeing? It's exactly what are you ashamed of? And that can be one thing, that can be a million things. And from there, it's personally to kind of like you said, you know, like you have loads of questions that are unanswered. Like, say, my parents, they will tell me this is what we do because we're Hindu, and this is what Hindus do. And it's only when I got older that I was like, wait, hold on a second. I mean, I don't believe in that just because we're Hindu. I want to know why, the reason. I'm sure there's a reason behind it. You just don't know. So it was there are times where I would go back and, you know, ask other people or read and understand. And again, like you said, if it aligns with my values, what I believe in, then great. If it doesn't, then I'll be all right, cool. You might do it, but I might not choose to do it. You know, each to their own. So yeah, I think it's very important to understand what exactly you are ashamed of when you talk about being Hindus, like, and from there you can kind of go and do, you know, your own readings or understand, talk to people, understand the meaning of it, you know. um yeah, and I think that's how I would say you grow as a Hindu, you know, because you have all these questions. And I mean, we never stop to learn. I mean, Hinduism is so broad, it's so old, like there's so many questions. Even if you put all the Hindus together, we probably will have all the answers about Hinduism. I mean, you know, there's a lot of answers that have been lost, you know, in a way. So it's about, you know, what you believe in and how to what extent you will go to get your own answers so that it aligns with your values. And yeah, you are free to do so. Like, no one's forcing it upon you, like, you know.
Completely agree with that. It's really important to question it yourself, and then you can kind of accept or reject Hinduism, or even just aspects of Hinduism on your own terms, instead of just kind of going along with it in a way, and then you can never really feel that pride because you don't really know what you're following. So yeah, that's incredibly important.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions?
Yeah, so we have a question from BP7891. Do you think our religious leaders and elders are aware of the shame and conflicting feelings many young Hindus have of their faith? It's open to anyone.
Well, I mean, I think trying to group all religious leaders or elders in the same bucket is always going to be hard to do, right? There are many who do get it and who are able to speak really eloquently um, to the shame and to the conflict, and offering resources, guidance, education about like Pooja was saying, right? Helping you understand what Hinduism actually is, where your shame comes from, and if you can inform that to feel like you can let that go, right? And at the same time, there always will be people who I think have a hard time or understanding, especially if they've kind of been raised in a frame like I said it, that therefore it is, and so you should just not question this. And that can be, a lot more difficult. Because I was noticing the comment by Musketeer, and it brought up a lot of thoughts for me that being Hindu is there are a lot of ways. There's definitely a lot of ways to think about it. Whether is the four types of yogas, right? Are you more inclined to bhakti versus karma versus jnana versus raja, right? And those are different paths, and there's different rituals, and there's different ways. Is there more than it's not that you're just a good person and then you're Hindu. It's that if you're Hindu, then you can use what you understand about that to be a good person, right? To understand the really core values of samsara, of moksha, of dharma and karma, and what those things mean, and what those things push you to understand about something that is inherently true, right? About the universe, and about our identities. And so I don't think it's about Hindu forms wanting to be a good person has to Hindu get honors his identity by sharing how you can do that. And I would hope that our religious leaders and our elders are able to appreciate that also in being a part of our connections with our faith and our personalization of it, so that we can hold on to it because it
Uh,
means something to
if I may like to add on this, if
Sure.
I'm observing that the three comments, including the latest comment that we have received, it is indeed like a string. It's like all the interconnected thoughts coming together, which I would like to say is that the question was um, here one the previous two second question, which say that what are the tools with which to remove the childhood shame, and the thing is that if you see it, it gets connected with the same with the question which came next, which said that are the elders aware about the shame which some Hindus have it, and the religious leaders and elders are aware, but I would say the elders more specifically. And the last thing which Mosquetier had said, that there are some set rituals and beliefs in Hindu that we cannot remove them from this one. What I'd like to say is that our elders, our parents, are aware about this childhood shame. Actually, the what Pooja has said is that from where this shame comes from. First of all, especially if I talk about my home, my parents are a little bit more progressive from our grandparents' side. So the thing is that even though there are set rituals, but the why behind the rituals and all has been explored a little bit. I'm grateful that my grandfather, for example, my paternal grandfather, was very much interested in knowing the why and the how this rituals and all those things, and so we had this small ritual of bedtime stories, and then the Amar Chitra Katha books. These are picture books, pictorial books, and then there are some children's pictures books of Ramakrishna Mission, for example. So what my grandfather used to do is that he they this is some sort of what we call in psychology and in psychiatry as family therapy, and it is connected with the cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT). So the thing is that it helps instill a sense of confidence in the child, and also in some way it answers the question that how these rituals, how these traditions have come to be, and why we as a Hindu uh, are following them. So the storytelling principle, which has come, which I have got from my grandparents and parents, it can be called as sort of a family therapy, and this family therapy can act as a very strong tool for removing this sort of a childhood shame which we some of the young Hindus might be having. And I feel that religious leaders should right now recognize this and should seek out ways to reduce this shame in the community.
Thank you for that. I love that. I love when you were talking about these sort of stories, and stories connect us. They're the universal language for us to make sense of the world. And I think that's a really powerful concept, how we pass on knowledge from one generation to another. And I was just imagining what it was like to be, sat listening to these stories as a child. It's amazing. So what a wonderful experience. I'm so glad you got to experience that. Does anyone else want to add anything to that, or should we kind of move on to the comments? I'm just a bit conscious of the time as well.
There's quite a few comments. The latest ones are from Owen Chowdhury. He asked if anyone understood Sanatan Dharma, and Brahmanism isn't part of Hinduism. The enlightened Jagadguru says that it's rejected in Hinduism. So if anyone has like this particular knowledge, do you want to address this comment?
I mean, Sanatan Dharma is maybe in some ways more accurate term for how we understand Hinduism, right? Sanatan Dharma also being translated to kind of eternal truth, and I mean I agree that all the enlightened leaders, gurus, have always rejected the idea of discriminating anyone on the basis of caste, and that Brahmanism is a complicated word in how it's defined and how it can be used as a pejorative.
Just for some people that might be watching now or later on when this is uploaded, and for me personally as well. So would you say that casteism is at all part of Hinduism? Because I understand, and I think lots of people understand that the discrimination part isn't part of Hinduism, but how and maybe why does casteism exist in Hinduism if it does at all?
Yeah, caste, casta, the word itself is Portuguese, and it has a really complicated history. What you do see in the Vedas is this idea of varna, right? Or temperament. And at the same time, while varna is discussed as the idea of how to explain people's temperaments and how Ayurveda works in some ways in society, it doesn't translate to caste in the way that it's understood today. And that can be a conflation of varna and jati, which is also a kind of cultural system that you see trade guilds by occupation in a lot of ways. So it's a really complicated thing to break down. does Hinduism itself talk about this idea of people being in a hierarchy more or less than other people? No. Do have Hindu people practice discrimination for a long time? Yes. Have there been movements within Hinduism to stop doing that based on what Hinduism actually says about divinity? Yes. Do people outside of the Hindu faith in the Indian subcontinent, in the South Asian subcontinent, practice caste-based discrimination? Absolutely. And that's important to be able to understand why it's kind of a social ill that's really problematic, and maybe at times people have used Hinduism to try to defend the wrong things that they do, but that doesn't mean that Hinduism endorses this idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
It's never straightforward, is it? Let's just put it like that. Yeah, it's never straightforward. Sounds like we've got quite a few comments coming in, which is really great. Thank you, everyone who's joining in and into the conversation. I think for me, it's just so helpful to have a space to reflect on these things. With our busy day-to-day lives, we don't often have a chance to sit over this and really hold space for this. So I really do appreciate your comments. I really do appreciate your expertise and knowledge and your willingness to share this with us. So have we got any more questions that we can kind of address,
So there seem to be more comments and questions here at the moment that I can see.
Mm.
We also had a few more questions ourselves, which we've sort of touched on. But I'll just have a look at them. So yeah, we've touched on quite a few of these questions, but there is one that we could. Tina, what do you think is quite vital to address?
I feel like we've covered lots of topics and we know the complexity around this.
Yeah.
And I guess thinking about this from a therapeutic angle now, that if we have somebody who is struggling with their identity as somebody who may identify as Hindu, what are the things we need to be considering? What are the things that we need to be thinking about and the ways in which we can be working with them to help them on this process of introspection? Because that's essentially what we're asking them to do. I know it's a big question, but yeah, I'm just curious because I think I'm just putting my therapist hat on, and I wonder if we do even have these conversations within the consulting room, the therapy room, that especially when there are kind of atrocities that do occur, racism and prejudice and discrimination. It's there, it's in our face. We can't hide away from it, and it does affect us. And the psychological consequences are we start to think and question who we are and why we are. So I'm just curious from that position, really, is how do we even work with it? How do we even start to make headway in this space?
Yeah, Tina, I think we've had conversations about how passionately I feel about this idea that spirituality and faith have long kind of been taboo topics in the therapy room. But I think that as people are becoming more knowledgeable and culturally competent, we're recognizing that that's really doing people a disservice. And it is important to be able to bring faith even into a therapy space. And also for vice versa, right? To make sure that mental health providers are understanding what therapy is and how it's not something that necessarily has to take away from a person's faith or spirituality. Um, because absolutely, faith is complicated and it's complicated for a lot of people, but it can be a tool to trying to be a better person and being able to tap into that and understanding how that helps someone understand their morals and their ethics and their values and what they want from their life is really important. And the more that we can be open to letting that into therapeutic spaces without worrying about whether it's evidence-based practice or like scientifically um, grounded is important.
Yeah, thank you, Kavita. Okay, how are we doing for time? We've got kind of less than 10 minutes now, haven't we, ish? Is that right, you know?
Yeah.
Any more comments, questions for our panel? I mean, this has been quite a really interesting conversation. We've touched on many different aspects of the struggle of identity, and it, you know, I guess where we've got to is that it's complex and that it's nuanced, and there is space for us to go and do the work. Essentially, you know, that's what we need to be doing. But also that if you have a community that is willing to share their knowledge, parents, grandparents, then that's even greater, you know, of course. I think we've got some comments from Ghazal.
Yeah. So asking clients questions like, which pieces or values of your faith are the ones that have lasted the longest for you, the ones that you're still holding on to and they guide you?
Yeah, I think those are lovely questions.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's true. I think Pooja and I would be able to relate to this more, like which pieces of faith and which pieces of your ancestry has lasted the longest for us, and all those things. Like especially for us, for my family, because we have lost the land, we have lost our roots, we have been uprooted, and we have migrated to India, and after that the way we have settled out here. So there are some things like, um, for example, there is a conch shell. Uh, this one, there is a conch uh, shell which is there at my home. That this is my grandmother's heirloom. So there, she was given this conch shell by her father. She bought it. Her father bought it from the Shakhari Bazaar in Dhaka. Pooja will know this, and she even now maintains the conch shell very much. She like washes it every day and all those things. And like there are sometimes competitions in Durga Puja. This one in Durga Puja pandals regarding blowing the conch shell for the longest period of time, who can blow it the longest and win the prize. And then my grandmother would give me the conch shell, that here, now is the time you go and blow the conch shell, and like this. So and there are some more things like the we have some molds made from marble and cement. These molds are used to make sweets at our home, and these are very old ones which we have kept and all this. And whenever we whenever we make those sweets, we use those molds to make the sweets and offer to our deities. So these are some pieces of our faith that we have held on for the long time, which also reminds us about our home place, even though we have severely disconnected ourselves from our home, from our ancestral land. My mother has never visited her ancestral house. My father never got to know what his father's village looked like. But still we have held on to these things, these little things, and we are carrying it forwards. Let's see what happens in the next generations of our family. So
Well, that is beautiful, Sandeep. Yeah, I can see, you as you're talking, you're smiling, and I was smiling because I just thought how wonderful. There's something physical that connects you to your faith, but also connects you to your your roots, your home, your land, and that's so powerful because that connects you to your whole sense of identity. So thank you for sharing that with us.
thank you.
Pooja, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just to add on, Henry, obviously, in terms of the pieces, physical aspects, we have the same at home, conch shell and all that. My mom probably, brought it from Bangladesh when she migrated to France. I'm sure she had a suitcase full of all these Hindu, because she wanted to build her temple at home. Like, we've always had a temple at home, and I'm sure it's the same with a lot of Hindus. I mean, you can't have a home without a temple. So there's been times where I've been into Hindu households and I haven't seen a god's picture or a god's statue, and I'm like, oh my god, like, so yeah, that's one thing. I mean, having like murtis at home and all these elements, that pieces that our parents use to carry out the pujas. One thing I personally held on to, and I still do it, and few people have noticed, and I've never noticed myself because I'm so used to doing it. It's like from a young age, I've seen my mom and dad like do a little prayer before they leave the house. So wherever I am, whether it's my house, someone else's house, they might not be Hindu. Every time I'm leaving a place, I always touch the ceiling or at the door, and then I do a prayer in my head and I leave the house, because that's what my parents taught me, to have a good food before you leave the house. So no matter where I am, even if I'm on holiday, like it's just natural for me to do it and leave in the hotel room. So that's one thing that I can think of that I personally carried on and will probably, carry on doing without even me realizing that it actually connects me to my faith. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I've seen that happen. I can't touch the ceiling, so I won't even try. I'm really, really far away from the ceiling, but it's lovely. What a lovely kind of concept and ritual that you can pass on, and it's embedded within you. So it's wonderful. I've just seen there's a couple of comments that have come through. I'm just conscious of the time, but we do need to.
Yeah, this can be our last question from Jay. So why are there different beliefs and rituals between Hindus from different geographical areas? So Hindu Gujarati, Hindu Punjabi, Hindu Bengali. Does anyone want to answer why? Not that we expect anyone to really know exactly why, but if anyone would like to take on this question.
I cannot. I'm not an expert in this, but I can try it because being in India and mixing with different people and all of this, I think it's because see Hinduism itself has a very big diversity within itself. There are and it is that's why we do not call ourselves as polytheists. We are called as pluralists in same terms like what Jay Lakhani's videos, and if you have seen that. So we are actually pluralists. We have so many gods and goddesses, but all of them all are tied to one central theme, a central idea that of this wide universe and its energy within and all those things. And the similar core aspect is seen in even in all the Hindus of different regions. Okay, and based on those central themes and all those things, different regional nuances and particular events which have occurred in that particular area. Like for example, if I may talk about like the goddess Sati and her husband Shiva. If and Sati when Sati was humiliated by her father for choosing to marry Shiva, and then she died on hearing all those things, and then Shiva got very angry, and then he also became very sad, and then he carried her body and circled around the earth, and then and then nobody knew what would we do to the how to stop this, because his role in the entire sphere of things was not being done. So then Vishnu took out his Sudarshan Chakra and had cut parts of her body, and it dispersed all around India. And so and from there has emerged Devi temples all around India, like Kamakya Mandir in Assam, then you have the Vaishno Devi Mandir, then the Hinglaj Mata Mandir in Balochistan, and similarly many other temples out there. And each temple is a Devi temple, but because of the significant part of her body which had fallen in that place, so it has a so that evokes a separate set of rituals which have certain differences with other Devi temples all across India. In this similar fashion, there are many stories which are interlinked to various geographical areas, and based upon that particular event which happened in that story, the rituals are based on those things. And I think that this entire gamut of diversity and the entire breadth of the stories which occurred in this entire Bharatvarsh has resulted in these different belief and rituals. But I feel that there is beyond those beliefs and rituals, there is a central idea of Hinduism, and that's it.
I think you answered that really, really well. Thanks.
I'm not an
I
expert though.
could
This
sit
is
and listen to Sandeep. Like I was literally like, keep talking, keep talking, keep talking. Wow, you have so much knowledge. Like that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I
thank
learned
you.
a lot today. I really have. Thank you everyone for your comments and questions, and thank you just for being here. I really, really appreciate it on behalf of the Brown Therapist Network. Thank you to our panelists. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us from in India, which is like where it's I don't know what time of day it is. It's
Now
very,
it's
very late.
2:30. It's 2:30,
2:30
and
in the
tomorrow I'll
morning.
have to go for duty also.
Oh gosh, okay. Um, and we've got Kavita who's joined us from the States, and Pooja from the UK, and Keenal, of course, back in the UK as well. Thank you everybody for joining us. This will be recorded and uploaded onto YouTube. We look forward to any comments or questions or any further topics that you want us to explore. This is what this is about. We're here to ask the questions and be curious and hold this space for you. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your day, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you again so much for joining us, and for everyone watching. Yeah, please do let us know. You can let us know in like the chat box here. You can let us know on social media if there are any other topics that you want us to cover. If you'd like to see us do a panel events like this in a slightly different way, just give us your feedback, and it'll really help us bring like topics to you that you really want to like listen to. And yeah, we really just appreciate it. Okay.
All right. Take care then, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.